My life is like an open book. It just, I am what I am, and I don't try to be anything else. It was just my mom and I, and a lady who lived with us for a while. We came in from Mexico. I'm an immigrant. Our means of income until the latter years, we had a chicken ranch, and we raised chickens and sold eggs. And later, my mother got a job with Missouri Pacific and then some attorneys, and thank goodness for the attorneys. I think the good Lord had something to do with the manipulation of where I was going and how our family was surviving, because we were not rich, we were poor, but I was rich in everything else. So that was a nice thing. I grew up in a rural area, went to a rural country school, where they had, in some cases, one room for all the classes. In other cases, we did move around from room to room, but it was a county school from first grade to ninth grade. I was born in Mexico City. I was born in the British Corduroy Hospital. That's how I got 3 citizenships: English, and of course Mexican and American. We came to the United States, I was very young. The first school I ever went to was Ursuline Academy, where I got my hand slapped several times because I refused to speak English. My first tongue was Spanish. I knew how to speak English, I just refused to do it. I've always been kind of a rebel in some fashion or form, but that was my way of showing off who I was. And so we're in a country setting. There was farmland all around. Our chicken farm was small. Next to us was a turkey farm. And then after that people had all these farmers they grew all kinds of crops. One of my favorite times of the year was they would bring in workers from Mexico, from South America, from the Philippines, and they had a labor camp. And every Sunday they would have cockfights. So I would go down there, and it was great fun. They would butcher a pig, for the most part, sometimes a calf, and bury it. It was delicious food, because at the end of the cockfight you could go and grab a tortilla and just grab a piece of meat and whatever vegetables, beans, or whatever they had, and chow down. And it was, everybody was, there was no segregation or anything else. Everybody was like everybody. It was a wonderful growing up. The people were wonderful. Our contribution to the migrants who were there, in October, November, we would take and butcher the old chickens that we had and dress them out, pluck them, and do all of that, and I hated that. We would take the chickens down to the migrant houses and give them that plus some food that we shared as part of Thanksgiving. And that was kind of a treat to me, because we were helping each other for the most part. There were times when I took vegetables, especially culls, and went up to the highway, the San Antonio Highway. This was in Laredo. And I had the highway was a two-lane road, wasn't a 4-lane road. And we would go up there and sell the culls to anybody who stopped by and bought the culls. I mean, I worked from 8 years old on up. There was no choice. We had to work. I suppose. I always thought we had to work. The farmers would come by and buy their own produce, and it was kind of a funny thing, but there was their culls. Those were things that they didn't harvest anyway. They were just left there in the field, and we'd go gather them up and sell them to whoever stopped on the highway and picked up. And they were good. There was nothing wrong with the vegetables. It was just one of those things. I went to school after the 9th grade. We had to go to a high school. We didn't even have a car. We got a car when I was probably 14. Got a special permit to drive. Went to Morton High School in Laredo, Texas, and graduated when I was 16. Fortunate or unfortunate, my father, who I never knew, decided he was going to bigger and better things. And that was the reason for moving up to, because we didn't want to live in Mexico City by ourselves. And so I'm assuming, I was too young to remember that, but unfortunately that's life. I have no regrets other than not knowing my father would be a, in later years I found some more things about him, but back then I didn't know, I didn't have any recollection of him. That was the reason for coming to Laredo, and it was the first port that we could come into. Did some things in Laredo, worked different jobs and went to school there, went to 2 years of college there, fought it all the way. I kept fighting them because I was having to pay for college and they kept giving me all these weird courses. And of course they said you have to have it for a well-balanced baloney. I was a music major, math minor. And because I didn't go to a school in the city, they didn't have a band program. So they would not allow me to participate in any of the band classes or anything else. That's how come I got drafted before I was able to join what citizenship I wanted. The rule was if you lived in this country and you got drafted, you automatically went to the Army. You could not choose what service, branch of service, unless you were a citizen. I went before the immigration department just before turning 21. I became a citizen a week before I was supposed to report to the Army. I went to the Air Force, went through basic training, and as soon as I got to my base, they sent me to the Marines for another 12 weeks. I got assigned to a special group. I don't know whether it was an intelligence thing or I had high scores, or I don't know why. That just happened. And on the base I was on, we had Marines, Navy, Army. It was all one. Goldsboro Air Force Base was where we were all stationed. Our mission was we could set up a base anywhere in the world in 48 hours. So we had we had Navy SEALs, we had the Seabees, we had the Army, we had the Marines, we had us, we had fighter squadrons and B-52s, and it was atomic base anyway. They had atomic weapons on this base, so it's probably been declassified now, but I've never shared them even with my wife at the time. We just button your mouth up and don't share those things. Even my kids probably don't even know that. I just never have. I don't know if it's declassified, I'm sure it is, but I just never talked about it. She was a little Irish-English woman who I dare say could take the biggest person on anytime, anywhere. She had a temper that would rival most people. She took care of things, but she had a heart bigger than the world. Help everybody, help anybody. Very proper. She never met a stranger. That's what I was taught. She was, but she survived a lot of things and kept going, and that's what I said, adapt and overcome. She came here with nothing. We got a house, wasn't much. Originally had an outdoor toilet, and so I survived all of that. Our well was salt water. We had to haul our drinking water. I mean, it was just things like that. And but she had the wisdom to pass on to me and to put in me that you never give up. You just keep going. We didn't have a car till I was nearly 15, and so we walked miles and miles to go to town if we went to town. So you learn that. I remember her wearing cardboard in her shoes because we couldn't afford She couldn't afford shoes to get them resoled, so she would stick cardboard in there to be able to keep wearing them. I remember that clear as mud. I remember she had a birthday, and I felt bad because I was probably 4, and I felt bad because I didn't have a present to give her. So I reached in her dresser drawer and I pulled out a girdle. They wore girdles back then, and I wrapped it up in a newspaper and I gave it to her as a present. And she made this thing look like it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I mean, she knew that that it was her girdle, and you know, I had to give her something for her birthday. But things like that. So, yeah. You could count the members of my family on one hand. She had a couple of sisters that lived up north. They were sending her boxes they were quite well-to-do, but they would send her hand-me-downs. And every once a year she would get a box and be thrilled. Terrific looking clothes and things. And she had a great sense of humor. That was probably the other thing that I remember most about growing up. She would laugh at things that she did. I remember her in Laredo, she got a fur coat from her sister. And she goes, well, we never wear a fur coat down here. So one cool day, she said, come on, my name is 2 last names. My grandfather, Richmond's last name, and my Phipps, and so they named me Richmond Phipps, and I never hated that. So she would, whenever I was in trouble, she calls me Richmond. Anyway, she said, let's go to town. And so we walked to town, and she had this fur coat, and we went into the Sears store downtown, and to another store that was one of these high-priced stores. And I remember the sales girl coming up, and she's saying, may I help you? And she said, yes, I'm looking for something that would go with my fur. And, oh, yes, ma'am. Knowing full right she couldn't afford anything, but she went through the motions of getting something that looked like this, would match this fur coat. And at the end, she would go, well, thank you, young lady. You've been very helpful. Let me think about this, and I'll come back and talk to you. And we went into town exclusively for that, just so she could have a laugh. Got on the bus and came home with this fur coat she never wore, you know. But those were things that she would do, you know, for entertainment. Why not? She was almost 40 when I was born. I don't recall her ever without gray hair. But yeah, she lived till she was about 88 years old. I was here working on the air when she passed away, and had to hightail it to the hospital. I didn't make it before she died, but I'm sure I will see her. She certainly would go to heaven. She was that kind of a caring person, so I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, they got to see him before she died, many times. She taught them a lot of things too, so she was a pistol. Funny lady, funny. One Christmas she got a Vegematic. You remember what those look like? And she took it out and looked at it, looked at the instructions, and stuck a tomato in the Vegematic and tried to push it down, and it wouldn't work. My brother comes in, and of course he had a sense of humor too, and he said, well, just put it on the floor and step on it. And she did, and it just smashed it. It didn't cut anything, you know, because you're supposed to take and slide it across the thing, but it didn't tell you that in the instructions. It just smashed the, so that was the story of the Vegematic. I don't think she ever used it again. The Vegematic. That, and when cartons came out, people are so used to the cartons that you open them up on one side. And Well, this was new to us because we all always got our milk either in bottles or they delivered. When they delivered milk, you just took the top off and there was milk. Or we had cacao for a little while. So, you know, you learned to... She got her first carton of milk and, of course, tried to figure out how to open it. She had a short fuse. And so she took a knife or did something to it. And got it open and got her milk and then shut it all back nice and neat. And so my brother came from across the street, wanted a glass of milk, and I remember I was sitting there at the kitchen table and he takes the carton of milk out and opens one side and goes like this, and of course everything just went and she started laughing because he looked at her and goes, "What did you do to this carton?" She said, "I couldn't get it open, but so I got mad." And he said, "Yeah, you got mad, all right. It just went." She slaughtered the top of that thing. I don't know how, but she clearly put it all nice and neat back like it was, you know, brand new. And so he went, and then went like that, and it just went. So funny. Anyway, yeah, I mean, he was building a house. He put in swinging doors, like having a bar between the dining room and the kitchen. And I was harassing him for some reason. We were coming back from work or something, and he bought ice cream cone, and I was sitting there licking ice cream cone. He walks in front of me, and I had been harassing him, and he just calmly opened the doors for me, and when I got about halfway into the swinging doors, he let them go. And I got the ice cream in my face. He said, "That's what you get for harassing me," you know. Just things like that. He was, you know, he was good about stuff like that. My brother's name was Richard. So they were always getting confused with Richmond and Richard. As I said, he was 22 years older than I was. He was my half-brother. She married, and his father died before birth. And she raised him, and then he went to World War II, and then got married after he got back. He was in Normandy and Battle of the Bulge, and could have gotten the Purple Heart, but he didn't want that. He wanted go leave the clusters instead. He never talked about it, except for the last few months before he died. I wished I had recorded, but he was too proud. He didn't want to talk about it. Yeah, he was like an adopted father, I suppose. He wasn't around all the time, but when he was around, he was pretty. I worked for him several times in different businesses he was in. A totally gifted individual, like, totally gifted. He could look at something and build it right then and there, boom, with no plans. He just had it in his head. He would make wooden puzzles, elaborate wooden puzzles, and he'd hand it to me. He said, "Take it apart and put it together." Ha! Not happening. I mean, he was just that good. I watched him make a china cabinet out of cherry wood. We went down, he lived in Montel then, he was semi-retired. Built homes, but he went down to Uvalde, ordered the cherry wood, came in, went to his shop, and he said, "Well, come on, you gotta help me put this together." And I said, "Where's the plans?" He said, "Right here." And he built this beautiful, you saw the cherry cabinet he made. Strictly, no plans, just made it. I mean, it was a fine piece of furniture, when he got through with it. But he was just that type, very gifted in that area. He had 2 daughters, 3 daughters actually. They all lived until one of them left and went to Florida, but all of them lived near Montel. When he retired, he moved back from California and he built houses and built all of their houses. Had the family all there, so we used to go lots of times over there. Thanksgiving, Christmas I was on the road, because we would have to go over there for both or one or the other. But it was nice. I mean, he was good to me. He taught me things that my mother probably would never teach me. I remember buying my first BB gun when I was about 9. Saved up and bought my BB gun, and I was out in the back of the house one day shooting birds. And he comes over there to me and he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm shooting birds." He said, "Why are you shooting the birds?" I said, "Because it's fun." He said, "You gonna eat them?" And I went, "No, why would I eat them?" He said, "You only shoot animals if they're going to attack you or you're going to eat them for food." He said, "If I ever catch you shooting a bird again, you're going to eat it." You know, I never shot a bird after that. I never shot a bird after that. Little lessons like that, you know. He was going to be a priest until the war. And then, you know, but he had that kind of mental attitude about things. Yeah, he was very calm. I never saw him ever get angry. Did you? No, never. I think he kept it all inside.